Hey guys, this is Razvan again, coming to you with another video. This time is gonna be about two metaphysical concepts, namely sex and death, which of course affect every single being on this planet and humans as well. So ever since the earliest times, we experience two realities. One is biological, while the other is psychological. Biological reality is confined by the boundaries of the biological reality, of course. And well, wait a minute, you'll say, of course, isn't it psychological, biological as well? Aren't we sending messages to our brain from the body? Isn't it our senses as well? So isn't that psychological that is biological as well? Well, what do I mean by psychological? I mean elements that seem to be popping into our consciousness from nowhere, that we notice since the beginning, having thoughts that we're not even aware of having them, having ideas that we're not even aware in our dreams, that having all sorts of images and ideas and thoughts and words seemingly coming from somewhere else, seemingly not being part of ourselves, or not being part of our biological reality. Sometimes we dream things that we never even seen in our lives, right? So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that psychological reality, which seems to be inside our heads, our own imagination. So that's kind of what I mean by psychological reality, right? The world of imagination, the world of the brain versus the world of the body, right? The way we experience, right? So in terms of our existence, ever since the earliest times, human beings have noticed that, by having children, have noticed that these souls, these babies, are coming from somewhere. So where is the other world that all these souls are coming from? Where is the other world that? And that's not just for human beings. That's for all living beings, right? That have babies and continue their life on. So they notice that they notice that these souls, these other beings that come into a world, they're coming from somewhere, right? Where are they coming from? Where is the other realm that these beings are coming from, right? Mircea Eliade has called these other he has called these other the sacred and the profane, and I'll add the book below so you can check out his book when he separates it in a different way, right? The sacred and the profane, but the ancient people saw it differently, right? So to have a border, to see where this world is, you need to have two endpoints, right? Because 2 points will make a line, right? As geometry says. So these two endpoints are actually sex and death, the moment of conception and the moment of our death, right? So in and out point markers of existence for all living beings is indeed sex and death, right? So the sex and death elements are very powerful, and they're very still powerful, but they're very taboo topics, right? Well, not so much sex in the present days, and I'll get into it why. I mean, people are talking a lot about sex, but death certainly taboo, right? So I just want to expand that by referring to history, by referring to mythology, by referring to religion, spirituality, right? So again, this world, the world of the spirit, was before the communication between the world of the spirit and the world of the biological reality, right? Was done by the shaman, who would either take drugs and communicate with the other spirits, or he would go all sorts of methods to bring the answers back from that world to his or her tribe, right? So and in many cases it would be that they would be sent there to have a question or an answer, and these have evolved into priests and all the function, or the spiritual function that the human beings have taken. So primitive people have noticed that humans are born and die, right? So So the other world is that which is beyond sex and death, right? So these two were the most important in ilo tempore, as Eliade calls. In ilo tempore is a term from Mircea Eliade, which means at the beginning of time, right? At the beginning of time, because the truth is that we evolved for so long that we only been modern for the last couple of thousands of years. Let's say the last 10,000 years, right? If we were to believe like ancient aliens and other things like that, that this is the proof that we're having, right? 20,000 years, let's say. But the truth, let's say by abstraction, even 30,000 if we go to primitive things. But we've been around for way longer than that, and the way our reality has formed in this period of time, that ilo tempore, that long period of time, that's the one that really transformed us, right? Because as you notice right now, transformation happens so fast, but the transformation that really matters, the one that really took a long time to stew and took a lot of time to come into reality, right? So in terms of sexuality, right, if you notice that our old system was polytheist. People believe in many gods, right? So in terms of sexuality, polytheism is celebrate sex, and you do have these in this is in everywhere where polytheism is. I'm not saying that all polytheism celebrates sex, but what I'm saying is that polytheism tends to celebrate sex, whereas monotheism tends to repress it, right? So if you look at ancient Greece, right, porn comes from pornai, which is like companions, prostitutes from early in the day. The temple of Aphrodite, which was basically a brothel, and I'm not even mentioning the Roman orgies and all these that are happening in primitive, the Dionysian orgies that were happening over the time, right? So and if you look at Hinduism, right, in India, you have the lingam and the yoni, the penis and the vagina, right, which is celebrated to this day. You have the penis celebration in Japan. You have all over the earth, and the same thing in overseas, right? In Americas, you had the same kind of ideas that politics ideas that people had, right? And if you notice that in monotheism, the sex is repressed, and it's really served for having babies or between man and a woman, but it's very minimized, right? Whereas in polytheism is just like orgies away, right? Or at least it tends to seem so. So isn't it that these polytheistic the switch from polytheism, which dominated ancient Greece, which dominated a big part of the world, how did this switch happen? How did human beings switch from this understanding of celebrating sex to repressing it between man and woman? And why that has happened all over the world? Why was this idea so popular? Of course, in many cases was forced by Europeans upon other civilizations, right? So the Europeans forced the Native Americans, right, because they were polytheists. So monotheism forced polytheism, but very interesting because polytheism, the belief in many gods. So it's very interesting because polytheism would not suppress monotheism, because monotheism is just another god in their pattern, so they wouldn't care. So we can see here that the war between these two forms of religion lies somewhere, right? It's not just religion, because like I said again, monotheism is just believing in one god, polytheism believing in many gods. So polytheism, why would polytheism try to suppress monotheism? Because monotheism, it's just another god in there, so why would they want to do that? Just another god. It's just not another god, they already have so many, right? So unless there's something else going on there's a quiet sexual revolution on the polytheistic part, right? And there's a quieting down of that energy, the sex and death, these two elements, right? So right, so it's why is this happening, right? Why is that? Moreover, if we notice polytheism, is that we notice that many gods in polytheism, and that's not just in Egypt, or that's not just for Aztecs, that's not just that's all over. They have these half human, half animals, right? Like, from Anubis to like Ganesha, from Hanuman to you name it, right? To Quetzalcoatl and whatnot, right? You have all these half human, half human, half animal, right? And you do have, like, if you look at, for example, the Greeks and god Pan, sexual celebration. That's what that symbolizes, right? That's what is the man animal, is the human beings realizing that they are completely free and unhinged, and when it comes to sex. That's why they were represented like that. And we notice that in monotheism, of course, there is a bit of man animal in there. Like, you have angels, you have the winged horse with in Islam, right? Or you do have elements like that, but mainly the gods are all humans, like Jesus, like Muhammad, like Buddha, like all these are human beings, and we seem to be not just repressing our sexuality, but we seem to acknowledge that we are more human than animal. Or rather, civilizations throughout time start noticing, to being more aware of that, right? Of the fact they're more human than animal. And that's shown through the religion, right? That's why we dropped polytheism, right? Is because it was very primal. Was they call this the reptilian brain and whatnot, right? And that denotes this sexual urges as well. So sexual urges, which again, they are in point of existence, not just human existence, but other animals as well. And of course, you do have anomalies like snails. Like, for example, you do have horses, seahorses. Sorry, seahorses are males carry the babies and whatnot. You do have all sorts of or snails, for example. Snails they multiply through themselves, which Salvatore Dali, for example, used as a symbol for Jesus, because it's the resurrection throughout itself, right? Snails. So you do have this kind of elements in monotheism, but it's not the same, right? So right, so even what's even more interesting, and that's in modern science, that modern science notices that a new strand of DNA is being created at birth. And even in Bardo Todol, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they're still talking about the same thing. If you watch the movie Enter the Void by Gaspar Noé, you can see that in the movie. He portrays that in the movie, where how certain souls are attracted by two human beings having sex, and they want to reincarnate in the body, right? And it's very interesting because there's speaking of sex between two human beings, speaking of existence, and speaking of there's a movie, a Western movie from 1966 called The Professionals with Burt Lancaster. And in this movie, I remember there's a quote by Burt Lancaster jokingly saying, "Human beings are the only animals that make love face to face," and it just completely flabbergasted me, because I realized that, wow, that is essentially why the gods became, because if you look at animals don't make love face to face, right? And if you think about the human representation, half human, half animals, that the ancients had, the ancient polytheists, right? And also you connect that with the idea of sexual perversion, sexual celebration, the way it is in polytheism. You start to form to understand why that happened, right? And you want to understand that creation, human beings are making love, like Burt Lancaster said in his 1966 movie. Human beings are the only animals that make love face to face, right? And you can see that because you can see that in European culture. As European became more Christian, they turned, and even in Greek times, they were showing their women from the front, right, not from the back, right? If you notice, now in modern days, we have this twerking, which is I believe is problematic, because it sends us back to being more animal. And I don't think, like, it might be a fad and whatnot, but at the same time I think it's very destructive for society, because what it does is it sends us the signal that it's okay to be more animalic. It's okay to go revert to that that state that we used to be. It's okay to involve rather than evolve, right? It's okay to, because that's what it is. It's devolution rather than that evolution, right? Rather than moving forward, right? So the trend of monotheism was a lot more than just at why that became popular, why monotheism, and namely Christianity, and after that Islam, why it became so popular, why it's more than just the scriptures, more than just the teachings, more than they can tell you, basically, right? So we can see there is something at hand there. There's deeper understanding of reality, right? So yeah, so our biological natures helped understanding our psychological, which seems to be boundless, like psychological, whereas biological is not boundless; it's bounded by our reality, right? Now I'm gonna talk a bit more about rather more occult magic, and bring elements from paganism. That's what they used to call polytheism, right? So there's this symbol, this drawing of this creature or mythical being from the 17th century by Eliphaz Levi called the Baphomet. Perhaps you've seen the Baphomet. I will add an explanation of the Baphomet below, so you can see it for yourself, right? So Baphomet has, if you look at Baphomet, right, he has the two arms. One it says solve and coagula, right, and that's what it is. It's sex, right? Because solve, coagula means the principle of attraction coming together, right? And that's like, if you look, he's got his and solve is the principle of separation, of avoidance, right? So you can see his arm, one arm is up, the other one is down, which indicates that up, you go up, it's you're coming apart, right? That is solve, because solve, you go up and you get separated, and that is what happens after death, right? All these things just fall apart, and when life begins, which is sex, is coming together, all these elements. So this dualistic nature of reality is what I'm talking about here. So of course these two solve and coagula, which are from alchemy, are solve and coagula could be their correspondent is in Hinduism Ida and Pingala, but that's like another talk that we can do all together. There's a lot of information, and I just don't want to get lost, so I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible, and as we follow through, we'll get more and more information out. So of course, this is also order and chaos, right? This is the same thing. Female and male elements are also part of this Baphomet figure, right? And the occultist, the chaos magician, Peter J. Carroll, the British charismatician, he actually made and I'm gonna show it over here. He made you see how it is sex and death, how the two, because each element has finds itself in its opposite, right? Love and hate, desire and fear, pleasure and pain, right? And they're connected with certain elements of nature, biological and psychological, the way I was explaining before, right? And yeah, he explains here, this is the alphabet of desire, right? That's like how we communicate through desire, because that's how life starts, through desire. We desire through sex, and that desire becomes real. So thus, through biological, psychological at first, and the impulse becomes real, thus wanting us to procreate, and it's inbuilt in us, right? So Peter J. Carroll went further, and he made a whole chart about this, right? Where you can see it over here. Oh, sorry. Let's see it over here. There we go. Yeah, so this is a desire. See, it's like the wheel of life, the way he put it together with alchemy, with elements from alchemy, elements from astrology, connecting the dots basically, right? That was left out by religion, because Christianity or they don't really talk about this, right? They don't talk about this because they want to keep this power that it is that sex has to create, right? And they don't want to they want to channel it, right, for as they see the good, because as it was before in prehistoric times, was, or rather ancient times, when polytheism was popular, and orgies and whatnot, and all this sexual orgiastic were celebrated, because sex is celebrated, right? So I was saying the chaos, the same thing, chaos, and because this is the chaos star right here. It's talking about the chaos star, right? So I was talking about before about chaos and order, right? So Jordan Peterson talks about chaos as being feminine, and order as being masculine, and just everyone freaks out. Why is chaos feminine? I don't want to be chaos feminine. That's like, it seems like, it's like, why? It's like, because chaos has this connotation, that's this kind of bad kid. Nobody wants chaos. Everybody wants order, right? So it has these negative connotations, and they think, but it has nothing to do with that, right? Chaos, every time you want any kind of change, you have to invite chaos. Without chaos, you cannot have any kind of change. Chaos is basically what change represents, right? So the usually females and females bring change into the world. Therefore, that's why they represent chaos. It has nothing to do with anything personal that people attach to that, right? So it's because and that's not just for human beings, right? Females bring change into the world by having babies, right? Of course, like I said before, that's not for all animals, that's not for everybody, that's not for, but generally the way this world is, that's kind of how it is. So that's kind of how, when we see this symbolism, we try to put it together, right, by analyzing history and by looking at all sorts of things that human beings have been through since the beginning of time. So in our ever-changing environment. Anyway, that's what I have from now. That's just wanted to see, and I will expand on this topic further, and I will keep talking about all the other metaphysical subjects as they connect with this one. So thank you very much for watching this, and have a good one. Bye bye. Thank you.